Lost in History 1984 Reconstructed by Gunisha Kaur. Audiobook. Chapter 4 Operation Blue Star. Bodies were being brought in municipal garbage trucks round the clock since early 6th June. We have been really busy to add to our woes. We don't have enough wood to burn the dead. Brahma Chalane Associate Press of America. On June 1st, 1984, the Indian government commenced Operation Blue Star, a full-scale assault on 40 gurudwaras throughout Punjab. Although complicit in the broader transgression within Punjab, the government primarily focused its attention on the most venerated and historically significant of Gurudwaras, the Darbar Sahib of Amritsar. Within the same complex and across from the Darbar Sahib resides the Akal Takht. The two institutions, originally constructed over 400 years ago, have continued to serve as the center of Sikh polity, discussion making, and temporal power. Historically, the Darbar Sahib has played a central role in the spirit and soul of the Sikh nation. Notorious invaders from the 17th and 18th centuries, such as Ahmad Shah Abdali and Nadir Shah, who have attempted to conquer the Sikhs, have targeted this place in particular. For hundreds of years, assaults on the Darbar Sahib of Amritsar have been perceived as assaults on the Sikh religion and people as whole. For example, while the government claims Operation Blue Star aimed to weed out terrorists and recover illegal arms and ammunition from the Darbar Sahib, many Sikhs construe the aggression differently. Operation Blue Star is the government's term connoting a necessarily military operation to flush out terrorists and recover arms from the Golden Temple. The implication being that it was an unavoidable cleansing operation as an act of purification, whereas Kalukara is how the Sikhs of Punjab remember the episode, connoting aggression, mass massacre, and religious persecution. Upon reviewing the details, the notion of mass genocide does not seem far-fetched. According to Indrajit Jaiji, for instance, Major General Brar, Lieutenant General Ranjit Dayal, and Lieutenant General Krishnaswamy Sundarji began planning the army assault of the Darbar Sahib approximately 30 months prior to June 1984. Furthermore, several months before the invasion, the masterminds of the operation had army units simulate the attack on a replica of the Darbar Sahib constructed near the interior of Garhwal Hills. Certainly, this planning disproves the suggestion that Blue Star was a spontaneous reaction to the immediate threats. Additionally, it seems evident that Prime Minister Gandhi's timing of the attack was no incident. The timing of the assault within the first few days of June coincides with the days during which Sikhs around the globe commemorate the martyrdom of the fifth Guru, Guru Arjan Dev Ji. Among his many accomplishments, Guru Arjan Dev Ji is renowned as the architect of Darbar Sahib, and hundreds of thousands of Sikhs annually flock to this site in order to pay their respects during the June commemoration. As in years past, Sikhs filled the complex to maximum capacity in order to honor Guru Arjan Dev Ji in 1984, when Indian government forces arrived and placed them under siege. A deliberate and calculated massacre ensued, a murderous affair perpetrated by a government against its own citizens. Joyce Pettigrew eloquently explains the underlying purpose of the army invasion. The army went into the Darbar Sahib not to eliminate a political figure or political movement, but to suppress the culture of a people, to attack their heart, to strike a blow at their spirit and self-confidence. S.M. Sikri, former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India, elaborates by describing Operation Blue Star as a massive, deliberate, and planned onslaught on the life, property, and honor of a comparatively small but easily identifiable minority community. In order to give an accurate account of what transpired during these dark days, some testimonies presented in a report by the Citizens for Democracy entitled Oppression in Punjab will be shared here. This report, which is banned in India, aspires to tell the truth, the as yet untold story, and in the process to correct the government's version as put out by the army, the press, the radio, the TV, and the white paper. Founded by Jai Prakash Narayan, a Hindu who stood as a civil rights leader of great national prominence, the Citizens for Democracy has served as one of the most reliable human rights organizations in India. This organization reconstructed a detailed account of what transpired inside the Darbar Sahib by documenting and evaluating accounts from the survivors of Operation Blue Star. The contents of the accounts of various survivors resonate closely in regards to key details, which indicates the likelihood of their accuracy. Yet, these accounts differ sharply from the official version as published in the Indian government's white paper. By comparing the account, mechanics of data collection, and inherent bias of two reports concerning the same event, it seems apparent that the white paper is a government cover-up in which propaganda is employed in order to censure the extent of atrocities. In the interest of space, only a handful survivor accounts from oppression in Punjab are presented here. The first documented eyewitness to the attack on the Darbar Sahib is Devinder Singh Duggal. The equivalent of a head librarian, Duggal was responsible for overseeing the Sikh Reference Library, a large structure located inside the Darbar Sahib complex. According to Duggal, the army opened fire on the Darbar Sahib on June 1st, not on June 5th, as the government's white paper claims. He recalls that the government opened fire around 12:30 p.m. and continued firing for 7 hours. When asked if there was a firing in response from within, Duggal stated, "Not a single shot was fired from inside the complex." When I asked some of the boys as to why they did not answer the firing, they replied that they were under strict orders of the Sant Jarnail Singh not to fire a single shot unless and until security forces or the army entered the holy temple. Contrary to Duggal's account, All India Radio, the only radio station in the country at that time, reported the reverse. On the evening news, this government-owned station reported that there was unprovoked firing from inside the complex and that the security forces had shown extreme restraint and did not fire a single shot in response. The evidence, however, demonstrates that on the first day, at least 8 people within the complex and 34 bullet holes damaged the exterior of the Darbar Sahib. According to Duggal, June 2nd passed relatively peacefully with no curfew and no firing from either side. During this time, the military reopened the doors and allowed a large number of Sikhs to enter the Darbar Sahib complex. While filtering the Sikhs into the complex, the army again sealed the exits, not allowing the innocent civilians an opportunity to leave. The governmental forces began to prepare their assault the next day by cordoning off the borders of Amritsar and imposing strict curfew. Unwarned, unaware, and unprepared, the masses collected inside the complex, oblivious to the merciless violence that would claim over 1 lakh lives. At approximately 4 a.m. on June 4th, the army attack recommenced. Duggal reports that thereafter, every second, the ferocity of firing increased and it continued unabated till the evening of the 6th of June. Through a window, Duggal vividly recalls seeing piles of dead women and children on the parikrama, again calling into question the ethics of a force recklessly claiming the lives of over 100,000 innocents. According to a member of All Indian Sikh Student Federation, about 100 Sikhs joined Jarnail Singh to help defend the Darbar Sahib complex with less than 100 arms, most of which dated back to World War II. A young female student who survived the massacre of June 1984 testified that on June 4th, if 1,000 rounds were being fired by the army from outside, then about 1 or 1.5 rounds were fired in reply by the armed militants from inside the complex. These accounts contradict the government's version in the white paper, which claimed a large quantity of weapons, ammunition, and explosives were recovered, including automatic and anti tank weapons. A small factory for the manufacture of hand grenades and Sten guns was also found within the precincts of the Golden Temple. Once again, the government's claim seems to be of little merit. No evidence has been offered to even suggest the presence of such weapons or factories, and no investigations have been commissioned to gather such evidence. In short, no proof has come forth that would lead on to reasonably believe the allegations of the government. This is not to say that the Sikhs did not have any weapons, but rather that the scale and sophistication of these weapons was grossly exaggerated in order to justify the invasion. The brunt of resistance by the Sikhs began after the army charged into the Darbar Sahib complex on June 5th. By this point, nearly all the Sikhs resistance forces had been exhausted and only a minimal amount of ammunition remained. Survivors have recalled that around 1 am on 6 June, an armoured carrier and 8 tanks entered the Darbar Sahib complex. These military vehicles destroyed the precious entrance through which they came and the marble ground on which they drove. Army officers announced from inside the tanks, "Please come out. God's blessings are with you. We will help you reach your home absolutely safe and sound." Those who were dehydrated and exhausted came out in the open, hoping to be returned safely to their families and homes. Instead, witnesses testified that those who surrendered were shot at sight. Ram Narayan Kumar and George Seberer describes this injustice in their work The Sikh Struggle. The army, which had suffered a heavy toll in these 3 days of battle, went berserk and killed every Sikh to be found inside the temple complex. They were hauled out of the rooms, brought to the corridors in the circumference of the temple, and with hands tied to their back were shot in cold blood. Among the victims were many old men, women, and children. Brahmachalani of the Associated Press of America reported that a large number of innocent Sikhs were killed in a barbaric manner. Some officers went around and used the Sikh's turban to tie their hands behind their backs, while other officers made rounds among the captives and executed each at point blank range. The Indian government has emphatically denied these statements, but they have been invariably corroborated by eyewitnesses and post-mortem reports. This element of Indian Army's attack on the Darbar Sahib parallels account of the murderous and unethical excursions of Alexander the Great. Philosophers have recorded that Aristotle openly and directly criticized Alexander for killing innocent after victory had already been attained. Along similar lines, the Indian regime has opened itself up to criticism by murdering civilians who had willingly and unconditionally surrendered to the army. The fact that Operation Blue Star also entailed assaults on 40 other Gurudwaras in Punjab simultaneously calls into doubt the government's justification that Operation Blue Star was simply an effort to flush out Jarnail Singh and other alleged terrorists from the Darbar Sahib. The sheer proportion of the assault indicates that the government's objective was likely something other than that which it claimed. As Cynthia Kepley Mahmood points out, the key problem was that the scale of the assault was disproportionate to the actual threat that the band of militants posed to the Indian state. There were about 200 armed insurgents at the complex on that day, but the army responded with some 70,000 troops who used, among other things, tanks and CS gas in the attack on the complex. The times and dates given by various survivors corresponds to those given by Devinder Singh Duggal. Notably, none of the survivors in question had previous contact with one another. Yet the harmonizing testimonies of each, that is Joginder Singh, Giani, Puran Singh, Baldev Kaur, speak the veracity of the accounts collected by the Citizens for Democracy. The cohesiveness amongst these stories suggests that their accounts are among the most accurate pieces of evidence and memory for our examination. The unimpressive series of numbers and figures advertised by the Indian government do not stand up against the consistent and unified accounts of those who experienced and witnessed Operation Blue Star firsthand. Thank you so much for listening to this audiobook. The rest of the chapters are in my next videos.